You know how every family has that one kid who's basically the human embodiment of a resume? That was my brother, Evan. He had a 4.3 GPA, perfect hair, and the kind of smug confidence that can only come from being praised for tying your shoes in alphabetical order. My parents acted like he was the second coming of Elon Musk, minus the social awkwardness and plus a saxophone minor. Then there was me. Nate. I liked building stuff. Taking apart old radios, fixing busted outlets, replacing our microwave fuse when it blew because Evan thought he could microwave a metal fork. For science. While he was getting science fair ribbons, I was getting grounded for rewiring the toaster to play music. In my defense, it worked. But in our house, unless you were headed to a 4-year university with a 50-page thesis and a LinkedIn profile, you were basically on a journey. My journey? Started with community college and ended with me becoming a certified electrician. When I passed the licensing exam, I was proud. Like, call grandma and crack open a root beer float. Proud. It had taken 2 years of night classes, 10 months of hauling gear across muddy job sites, and one truly traumatic moment where a squirrel popped out of a ceiling tile mid-installation. But I did it. And you know what my mom said when I told her? She tilted her head, smiled like she was talking to a toddler who'd drawn a wobbly stick figure, and said, "That's cute, honey. Maybe you can help around the house now." Cute. Like I just finger-painted a diploma and slapped it on the fridge. Meanwhile, Evan's college graduation? They rented out a banquet hall. Hired a band. Had a literal red carpet leading to the front door, complete with balloon arch and a giant gold, "Congrats, Evan," banner that probably cost more than my tuition. I wasn't even in the family photo. I was in the back, holding someone's jacket, looking like the event's lost and found volunteer. But I smiled. I clapped. I said nothing. That's kind of been the theme of my life, really: smile, nod, get to work. Because if you grew up in a house where achievements were measured in SAT scores and seminar invites, telling your parents you were going to be an electrician was like announcing you were going to professionally fold napkins. Dad once told me, dead serious, "You've got strong arms. Maybe you can fix things while Evan builds things." As if screwing in a light fixture was caveman work compared to his precious son's consulting and strategy. Major. I didn't argue. Arguing never worked in our house. Logic was a guest that rarely got invited to dinner. So I just kept going. Quietly. While they tossed Evan congratulatory confetti every time he sent an email. I picked up more jobs. Bought my own tools. Taped my electrician's license above my workbench like a trophy no one else would clap for. By the time I turned 25, I had a small crew, a beat-up truck with my business name stenciled on the side, and more calluses than compliments. But you know what? I had clients. I had bookings. I had weekends where I'd sit on my own couch, sip cheap coffee, and think, they'll see it someday. They'll get it. I didn't expect a party. I just wanted one. "We're proud of you." It never came. At least, not until their office lights went out, and my truck rolled up. But we're not there yet. Growing up, the only thing my parents ever called me exceptional at was being low maintenance. Translation: I didn't ask for much. Which, in our house, meant I didn't demand attention the way Evan did. He was the kind of kid who'd turn in a group project and make sure everyone knew who the group was. He got trophies, plaques, medals. I got chores. And if I did them right, I got upgraded from low maintenance to independent. Which sounded nice, until you realized it was just a polite way of saying we stopped checking in on you. The difference between us became more visible the older we got. When Evan got accepted into college, full ride, early decision, they framed the acceptance letter. Literally. Hung it in the living room like it was a national monument. When I got into trade school, Mom said, "Oh, that's great, hon," while checking the expiration date on a yogurt. At dinner, they'd ask Evan about his professors, his plans, his opinions on global economics, like he was already drafting speeches for the UN. Then they'd glance over at me and go, "Still doing that wiring thing?" That wiring thing. like I was assembling toaster parts in a basement with a headlamp and a prayer. The most attention I got was when the Wi-Fi went out and they needed someone to reset the router. It wasn't just the emotional stuff either, it was financial. They paid Evan's rent, car insurance, study abroad program, and even sent him monthly mental wellness funds. When I asked for help covering a textbook on electrical theory, my dad blinked and said, "Nate, if you want to work with your hands, you've got to stand on your own 2 feet. Cool. So Evan gets therapy in Italy. I get feet. But I didn't complain. That's the thing, I really didn't. I just worked. I did my coursework during the day, worked a part-time job at a hardware store in the evenings, and picked up odd wiring gigs on the weekends. Ceiling fans. Light fixtures. One time I installed an outdoor entertainment system for a couple who paid me in cash and leftover brisket. Still one of the best Saturdays of my life. I lived in a tiny studio apartment over someone's garage. The ceiling leaked if it rained hard enough, and the bathroom door didn't close all the way, but it was mine. And when I finally passed the exam and got licensed, I laminated the certificate like it was a VIP pass to my own life. My parents didn't come to the ceremony. Said it was more of a formality, right? My mom even added, "Do they really do ceremonies for those things?" No band. No hall. No catered sliders with branded napkins. Just me, standing under a fluorescent ceiling in a folding chair, clapping for the 3 of us who passed. Later that day, Evan FaceTimed the family from his internship's rooftop party in New York. He had on sunglasses, held a drink in a copper mug, and shouted over the wind, "Guess who just pitched to the VP of Marketing?" Mom screamed. Dad fist-pumped like we just won the Super Bowl. I told them about my license. Mom blinked. "Oh right, that's today, huh? Well, we're proud of you too." Too. As in also. As in, addendum to Evan's main event. Still I nodded. Smiled. Said, "Thanks." Then I hung up, made myself a grilled cheese with the heel of the bread, and sat on the floor because I hadn't bought chairs yet. It sounds sad, but it wasn't. It was peaceful. Quiet. And in that moment I decided, if they couldn't celebrate me, I'd celebrate myself. So I got to work. Branded my truck with Carter Current Electric. Bought a uniform shirt. Set up a business number. I even made a website with one of those cheesy drag-and-drop templates that looked like it was coded by a boomer on vacation. But it worked. Clients started calling. I'd drive to jobs, wire a breaker box, fix a shorted outlet, and leave behind business cards made from thick, matte paper that smelled like ambition. Every job made me feel a little taller. And slowly, quietly, I was building something real. Still, nothing changed back home. Until their office lights went out. But we're not quite there yet. By my 2nd year running Carter Current Electric, something weird started happening. People stopped asking, "Is this your side hustle?" and started saying things like, "You came highly recommended." I won't lie, it felt good. It felt earned. Clients weren't just happy, they were referring me to their friends, their neighbors, their dentists. I even got called in to fix a church sound system, which was either divine intervention or someone's very confused idea of a prayer request. Either way, I got paid. That summer, I invested in a better truck. Same model, but this one didn't rattle like a shopping cart with anxiety. I hand-lettered the logo on the doors first, badly, then paid a pro to fix it. Carter Current Electric, in bold black print, with a cheesy slogan underneath. Power you can trust. Trevor hated it. "Bro, you sound like a local politician running on batteries." I kept it anyway. Clients liked it. Old folks called me the polite one with the truck. I'd take that any day over the disappointment with the GD, which is how I was still referred to, lovingly, of course, by Aunt Janice at every holiday dinner. My workdays were long. Up at 6, in bed by 10. Hands smelling like copper and drywall dust. I did residential and small commercial, lighting installs, rewires, breaker boxes, full basement makeovers. Trevor, my apprentice, was loud but golden. He wore neon socks to job sites and once asked a client if their security camera was haunted or just possessed. But he showed up early, learned fast, and once rescued a baby raccoon from under a deck mid-job, so he was basically family. Still, despite everything, the growing business, the steady clients, the booked calendar, I was invisible at home. Mom still called Evan the achiever. She once told her friends I was dabbling in handiwork, like I'd picked up a wrench on a whim and accidentally started an LLC. Dad asked me at dinner one night, "How's that, extension cord thing going?" I stared at him. "You mean my electrical business?" He nodded like I'd confirmed I was, in fact, still trying. Meanwhile, Evan was out here giving TEDx talks and pastel button-ups about scaling sustainable frameworks, or whatever business buzzword buffet he was on that week. His Instagram stories had hashtags like #PitchDeckLife and #RiseAndGrind. Mine had photos of circuit panels and me holding up 2 fingers next to a busted fuse box like I'd just conquered Everest. I didn't envy Evan's life. Not really. I just envied that my parents saw his as real. To them, a kid who rewired a colonial home from scratch was less impressive than one who formatted a PowerPoint with transitions. I stopped trying to convince them. I focused on growing. Picked up a commercial client, a local gym chain. Did LED retrofits. Scored a contract with a real estate group. Word spread. The phone started ringing with bigger numbers. Trevor and I even had matching polos now. Blue. Tasteful. Embroidered logo, no slogans. We were legit. Then one day, I got a voicemail. From Evan. That alone was strange enough. He never called me unless it was about moving furniture or borrowing jumper cables. "Hey bro, quick thing, Mom and Dad's office is having flickering lights again. Pretty sure it's the old setup Grandpa Joe wired back in the Jurassic era. Can you swing by and take a look?" I played it twice, just to make sure I hadn't hallucinated it. There it was. Evan. Asking for my help. No snark. No little bro sarcasm. Just asking. Like I was a professional. For a second, I didn't even know how to feel. I should have felt vindicated. Triumphant. Instead, I just felt quiet. I didn't call him back right away. I had a packed schedule, which was true, but also, I needed time to think. To enjoy it. To sit with the fact that for once, they needed me. 2 days later, I got another voicemail, this time from Dad. "The lights are out completely now. We had to close early. Let us know when you're free." I smirked. Let them sit in the dark a little longer. The thing about being underestimated your whole life. You learn patience. The kind of patience that doesn't crack when your parents call your business a hobby. The kind that doesn't flinch when your brother posts another filtered selfie from some conference booth saying, "Find your lane and accelerate." And definitely the kind that lets you sip coffee on your porch while your parents' office sits in total darkness, waiting. I didn't gloat. Okay, I smirked a little. But only to myself. Because honestly, I was ready to show them what I'd built. Not to prove something, not really. But to stand in front of them, logo on my shirt, name on the truck, and watch the light bulb go off in their eyes. The metaphorical one, anyway, the real ones were still out. When I finally called back, Dad answered in under 2 rings. "Nate, hey, we're kind of desperate here. None of the lights are working. Evan's got some big client visiting tomorrow. Think you can fit us in?" I glanced at my schedule. Booked. Completely. But I said, "Sure. Tomorrow morning work?" The pause on the other end was audible. Like they hadn't expected me to have options. Like I'd just been waiting. Yeah. That'd be great. Click. The next morning, I pulled up in my truck at 8:45 sharp. Parked it right out front, where the bold white lettering, Carter Current Electric, faced the lobby windows. I saw Evan glance up from his phone and do a full double take. Good. I walked in with my toolkit in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Wore my cleanest work shirt. The one with the embroidered logo and my name stitched across the chest like a name tag that said, "I'm not the helper, I'm the business. Mom was at the front desk, looking frazzled and mildly horrified that I hadn't arrived in, I don't know, denim overalls and a trucker cap? Oh. Nate. You didn't say you'd be wearing a uniform. It's my company, I said. We tried to keep things professional. Evan came around the corner. Dude, thank God. The lights are completely dead. Breakers, maybe? Maybe, I said, already scanning the hallway. Now, I could have rushed it. But I didn't. I walked slowly. Methodically. I made notes. Asked questions I already knew the answers to, just to watch them try to respond like they understood wiring. Is this building on a split-phase panel? You guys ever upgrade the subpanels since the remodel? Evan blinked. The what now? Exactly. Turns out, the whole system was ancient. Grandpa Joe, bless him, had done his best, but half the setup was taped together with brittle cable and optimism. There were wires snaking through conduits they didn't belong in, and one breaker had melted slightly. I pointed it out with the kind of calm a surgeon uses when holding up an X-ray. This here? This could have sparked a fire. Mom gasped. A fire? I nodded. If you're lucky, it just fries your equipment. Worst case? Poof. Dad, who had arrived somewhere between breaker and fire, turned a shade paler than I'd ever seen. Well, fix it. Please. So I did. But I took my time. Because safety, of course. Trevor arrived halfway through with the spare parts and a smile that said he knew exactly what this job was. He even whistled when he saw the building. This is the one? Dang. You weren't kidding. Big job. I grinned. Yeah. Real important client. By noon, we had the lights back on. The entire building hummed softly as power flowed again, like it had been holding its breath for years. And there I was, standing in the lobby with a signed invoice, watching Evan try to pretend he wasn't impressed and failing miserably. So, you do this full-time now? Yeah, I said, handing him a copy of the receipt. Been doing it full-time for a while. Dad took the invoice. Flinched slightly at the total, not because I overcharged, but because I charged fairly. Like a professional. Like someone whose work mattered. Thanks, son, he muttered. I nodded. But I didn't say, "You're welcome." I just said, "Let me know if it happens again." Then walked back to my truck. The same one they used to call. That noisy thing in the driveway. Now, it had my name on it. I thought that was it. I really did. I thought I'd fixed the problem, collected my check, and driven off into a metaphorical sunset of smug satisfaction. But no. Because after I restored power to their precious office, something even rarer than a prompt client payment happened. My mom called. Unprompted. Not a voicemail. Not a text. A full-on voice call, at 7:02 p.m. Just as I was finishing up a ceiling fan install for a retired couple who paid in cash and banana bread. Hi, honey. I just wanted to say thank you again for today. It really meant a lot. I stood there, confused. Not because she was thanking me. I mean, technically, it wasn't even her money paying for it. It was the company's. But because her tone was off. Softer. Less managerial. More maternal? I didn't know how to respond. So I gave her the neutral. Of course. Glad I could help. She paused. Then, you've really built something, haven't you? My jaw clenched. That question, that tone, like she just now realized I was a real person with a real career and not just a walking toolbox they happened to raise. Yeah, Mom. I have. Another pause. And then, we might have underestimated you. No might about it, but I didn't say that. I didn't gloat. Didn't yell. Didn't say what I used to rehearse in my head during those long days at trade school, grinding through wiring diagrams while Evan got gift cards for every midterm. I just said, it happens. Because what else could I say? They didn't clap when I passed my license exam. Didn't come to my certification ceremony. Didn't even post a blurry Facebook. So proud of our son. Photo with me holding up a wrench like a trophy. But now that I'd saved their precious office from a complete electrical meltdown, suddenly I existed. Trevor called it dadception. When a parent realizes their non-favorite child might actually be useful. The next day, Evan texted me. Yo. Good work yesterday. You're legit. I screenshotted it. Not because I cared what he thought, but because I never thought I'd see it in writing. And that's when things started to shift. A week later, Dad asked if I could take a look at the panel in the garage. The one that had always been fine. Until it suddenly wasn't. Then he asked about lighting upgrades. Then Mom wanted new fixtures in the kitchen. Suddenly, I wasn't the invisible son anymore. I was the son with tools. With a truck. With value. But here's the thing no one tells you about late-stage praise from your parents. It doesn't hit the same. When they start clapping after the race is already over, it doesn't feel like support. It feels like convenience. Like you're finally useful. Not respected. Useful. And honestly, that stung more than the silence ever did. One night, after a full day of installs and 2 emergency calls, I dropped Trevor off and sat in my truck for a few minutes, just staring at the logo on the glove compartment. Carter Current Electric. I said it out loud. Just to remind myself it was real. That I did this. Whether or not they saw it, I did. And that was enough. Almost. About a month after I fixed the blackout, I got a text from Evan. Dinner at Mom and Dad's this Saturday. Family's coming. They want everyone there. You in? I sat there staring at it, half expecting a follow-up text that read, and bring tools. I didn't respond right away. Part of me assumed this was just another Evan appreciation night, where the rest of us were decorative plants. But another part of me was curious. Curious what it would feel like to walk in after they needed me. Not as the afterthought. Not as the seat filler. But as someone who had finally, and undeniably, delivered. So yeah? I said yes. That Saturday, I pulled up right on time in my clean truck, logo sharp and centered in the headlights. I wore a fresh polo with my business logo stitched on the chest and jeans that hadn't seen a crawlspace in over a week. Casual, but not invisible. The house was glowing. They'd set up string lights across the backyard like a Pinterest board come to life. Fold-out tables. Fancy disposable napkins. Even assigned seating. It was more effort than I'd seen since Evan's college grad party. I stepped inside and was greeted by the unmistakable smell of pulled pork and performative parenting. Evan was mid-story in the kitchen, surrounded by 3 uncles and a very bored-looking cousin. So I told the marketing director, if we don't reframe the funnel now, we'll miss Q4 traction. And boom, she added me to the leadership call on the spot. Claps. Literal claps. My mom beamed like she'd birthed a prophet. I slipped into the living room, where a few relatives nodded at me, clearly trying to remember if I was still doing that wiring thing. Eventually, Mom called for everyone's attention. Okay, everyone! We just wanted to take a moment to toast Evan for being awarded Client of the Year at his firm. We're just so proud of all his success. Cue the glass clinks, enthusiastic whoops, and that one cousin who always cheers like he's at a sports bar. Evan raised his glass, faux humble, then nodded toward me. And hey, let's also shout out Nate, who fixed the office and started his own electric thing. Electric thing. I smiled. Tight. Carter Current Electric, I said, voice calm. We handle residential and commercial wiring, panel upgrades, code corrections, the works. Mom jumped in, clearly flustered. Yes, of course. Carter Current. We're very proud of both our boys. Truly. Both. There it was again. I'd become the extra line on the banner. The fine print under the headline. But I nodded, toasted, and didn't make it weird. Because what no one at that table knew, including Evan, was that 3 days earlier, I'd signed my first 6-figure contract. A full wiring job for a 3-story apartment build. Legit blueprints. Hard hats. Real crew. Big league. And I hadn't told anyone. Because for once, I didn't need to. After dinner, While everyone shifted to pie and more Evan anecdotes, I stepped out to the front porch. The light above the door, the same one I'd rewired last year, buzzed softly, warm and steady. Funny how even their house now ran on work they'd once laughed at. A moment later, Dad joined me outside, glass in hand. "Nice night," he said. I nodded. "It is." He sipped his drink. Then, after a beat, "You know, we didn't really get it back then. What you were building. We thought it was just something to pass time." I let him talk. "But it's real. You built something real. And I'm proud of that. Even if we were slow to say it." I looked at him. This wasn't a prepared speech. It wasn't forced. It was late, sure, but honest. "I know," I said. "Thanks." We stood there a moment longer, quiet except for the soft flicker of the porch light, my work, glowing over his shoulder. Eventually he headed back in. I didn't follow. Not yet. Because sometimes, after you spend a lifetime in someone's shadow, even the quiet moments of recognition are worth standing in for just a little longer. About a week after that dinner, I was back to the grind. We were rewiring an old farmhouse on the edge of town. No cell reception, no AC, just insulation dust and country silence. Trevor was complaining about the heat like it was a personal attack from the sun. "Bro, I swear, if I die in this attic, tell my mom I wanted a closed casket funeral and no gospel music." Then my phone buzzed. 2 missed calls from Mom. 1 from Dad. And a text from Evan. "Call me when you can. Urgent." I stepped outside, wiped sweat from my forehead, and called. Evan answered like he'd been pacing. "Dude, the office lights are flickering again. Like bad. We've had to reschedule 3 meetings. You around?" I let that hang. They'd already called twice. Maybe they assumed I was waiting by the phone, permanently available. Like my business, my life, was still a favor they could cash in at any moment. I didn't answer right away. Not because I was trying to be petty. Because I was busy. Because my time had value now. Because the farmhouse client? She booked weeks ago. "I'm booked till next Thursday," I said finally. "Can try to shift some stuff, but that's my soonest." Silence. "Can't you, squeeze us in?" "I could cancel a client," I said. "But I'd have to charge a premium. Rush fee. You know, priority scheduling." It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. They hadn't paid attention when I was working for tips. When I was stringing wires and crawl spaces for gas money. But now, suddenly, I was worth rearranging the calendar for? "Right," Evan muttered. "Okay. Yeah. Let us know." I hung up and walked back to the van. Trevor raised an eyebrow. "The royal family needs light again?" "Apparently," I said, grabbing the voltage tester. "But we've got barns to power and raccoons to avoid." Later that night I got another call, this time from Dad. He didn't beat around. We hired someone else. Some guy from the city. He said he could get here faster. I nodded. Makes sense. Then Dad added. But he showed up, looked around, said it was too risky. Claimed he didn't want liability if something caught fire. Ah. There it was. "So," Dad said awkwardly, "if your schedule opens up." I almost laughed. Not out of spite, out of irony. When I was 15, I offered to rewire their old garage as a project. Dad had said, "Electricity's not a game, Nate. Leave it to the pros." Now, I was the pro. So I gave him a date. At my rate. And included a site visit fee. No freebies. No family discount. Just business. I showed up 3 days later, clipboard in hand, Trevor in tow. Mom opened the door looking flustered and apologetic, the way people do when they've realized they underestimated the wrong person, again. Evan didn't say much. Just nodded. The system was worse than before. They tried to patch it with off-brand parts and Google tutorials. I didn't judge. I just did the job. Clean, efficient, thorough. 12 hours later, every light in that building was on. Every outlet tested. Every wire was traced and replaced. I left behind an invoice labeled "Emergency Recovery After DIY Disaster." Trevor chuckled the whole way home. "Think they'll leave you a Yelp review this time? Only if they don't read the total first." But that wasn't the end. Because what happened next? That was the part no one expected, not even me. 3 weeks after the second office job, I got a call I never expected. Not from Evan. Not from Mom. From a stranger. "Hi, is this Carter Current Electric? We're reaching out from Westbrook Properties. One of our tenants gave us your name." Turns out, it was one of my parents' clients. A high-profile law firm renting space in their building, who nearly pulled their lease after the lights failed again. The guy on the phone said, "You came highly recommended. We're looking for a long-term contractor." That call led to a contract. That contract led to a network. In a matter of months, I was wiring entire buildings downtown. Office parks. Cafes. New construction. I had to hire a second crew. Then a third. I opened a small office of my own. With a sign outside. A real one. "Carter Current Electric, power you can trust." And one day, while walking back from a site inspection, I saw something that made me stop cold. My parents' office. Lights on. Lobby full. And 2 guys outside, pointing at my truck. They were admiring the wrap. Talking about the logo. One of them even said, "I've heard this guy's legit. Always books up fast." Inside, Evan walked past the window, talking on his phone. Didn't see me. Neither did my parents. But that was okay. Because in that moment, I wasn't looking for recognition. I had it. On my own terms. As I stepped into my truck, Trevor texted me a photo. A screenshot of a Facebook post. "So proud of our son Nate. Check out his growing company. #entrepreneur #our electrician son. Mom." She tagged me. I didn't comment. Didn't like it. Didn't share it. I just smiled. Then drove off to the next job. Lights on.